Greetings, it's Bill Fitzgerald with the latest episode of FSOT Prep. As I promised in the last video, I told you that we will be coming back to the job knowledge section of the test. Job knowledge is one of the 4 parts of the test. Job knowledge gives you 60 questions in which you have to answer, 40 minutes in which you have to answer 60 questions. Let's just launch off. As I showed you this last time, these are the subjects that the State Department wants to determine if you can answer these questions correctly, proving that you are in a position to assume the job of a Foreign Service officer. Communication was the first. And really, the State Department wants to know that you understand writing and that you understand public speaking, that you will be able to engage foreign audiences or local audiences in the United States, conceivably, and explain U.S. policy to them. It also seeks to know whether you have a good grasp of news sources out there, be they newspapers, magazines, television shows, including, say, Al Jazeera. They're also looking for your ability to identify think tank pieces of information, white papers, non-papers, that sort of thing. And they want to know whether you have a grasp of online news sites. I think many of you do. Most of you do. I'm confident that you do. And ultimately, the State Department wants to know that you are capable of carrying out public relations, media relations, regardless of your career track. This is not just for public affairs people, although you will be well advised to consult, if you're overseas, consult with your public affairs officer, or in a larger embassy, the information officer, who's generally the spokesman or spokeswoman for the embassy. I've given you some texts that will help you on writing well, which is the classic nonfiction guide by William Zinsser. Writing that works takes a different perspective, but is very much similar. It's written by Ken Roman of Ogilvy and Mather. I'm not sure Ogilvy and Mather exists as a standalone advertising agency, but Ken Roman was the CEO for, I think more than 20 years. And he provides you good, succinct advice on how to better your writing. The elements of style, again, that's E.B. White and I forget Strunk's first name, but the classic on grammar. And I would, I think there are other people now writing them instead of E.B. White. I would try and pick up an E.B. White portion, because one of the things that E.B. White added to the elements of style was precisely that, the style portion of the book, which will help you not only in the English expression part, this book, but it'll also help you when it comes time to take your essay, the one question essay that you'll have. And then finally, I've added on speaking well. These are only suggestions on my part, and they will show up in the show notes and will be posted on my website, foreignservice.org, foreignserviceexam.org, and as well as the slides. I'm in the process of overhauling my website, but it should be up there momentarily. Next one is computers. For those of you who are millennials or Generation Xers or whoever you are who have grown up with computers, this should be fairly easy for you. For old folks like me, who came into the Foreign Service and we were still using Wang computers, it can be tough. Basically, the important thing is that the department is based on PC and network-based PCs, both overseas and in the department. They want to know, the State Department wants to know that you are prepared to use word processing, spreadsheets, PowerPoint, databases, as well as email. One of the things that took me by surprise in the practice test, and I encourage you all to continue with the practice test, is to make sure you know what you're weakest at and what you're best at. Don't study the best stuff, study the weakest stuff. They're looking for formulas, for you to identify correct formulas for a spreadsheet program. And also, how would you basically supercopy a word in word processing program of Word? In other words, MS Office is dealt with in this category of computers. You will be given, when you go overseas, you'll be given you'll have to go out and buy your own smartphone. At some point in your career, you'll reach, back in the department, you'll reach the deputy officer level, which is, I think, when the department actually gives out U.S. government smartphones. They're still giving out Blackberries to everyone. Blackberries may not be the smartest phone out there, but it has certain security regulations, security protocols that the other ones just don't have, or at least the IT folks are saying they don't have. And then ultimately, you're going to be looking for, under computers, you're going to be looking for vocabulary like URL, 404 error messages, HTTP versus HTTPS. What's an inter-service provider? What's an inter-service provider? What's an email host? That sort of thing. Now, online, there's a Microsoft dictionary on computer terms that's fairly up to date, and I don't know how it ended up on the internet, but take advantage of it while it's still up. Also, there's very good, if you think that you're weak on computer stuff, there's a dictionary of computer and internet terms put out by Barron's that might be worthwhile for you to pick up and take a look at. Next is economics. They want to go over basic economic principles with you to make sure that you understand them. And supply and demand and elasticity were the ones that came to mind, but there are many other economic principles that they will hit you with on this test. Also, they will delve into the history of economics from Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Thomas Malthus, the whole concept of the invisible hand, if you're referring to Adam Smith. Economic issues, current economic issues like the Laffer curve has been resurrected apparently from the Reagan administration, but also world trade, interest rates, trade within the United States, fiscal policy, taxation, monetary policy. In other words, they want to check whether you are really familiar with this sort of economic theory and economic specific questions. And of course, they're going to look at the economic system of the United States, Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve banks around the United States, and the world. Think of WTO, the World Trade Organization. There will likely be a question on the 2008 depression or recession. I'm not quite sure what we're calling it these days. It's probably a recession. But with the world, we're also looking at the IMF, the World Bank, IBRD, the United Nations and what they do in economic policy. Okay, so economics. For those of you who have no economics whatsoever, you haven't had it in high school or in college, or you've been away from higher learning for a bit of time, you'll want to take a quick look at online on the khanacademy.org site. They have a very good, I think they have 2 episodes on basic economics, perhaps more. But when I watched the first one, I was very impressed with how they are basically providing the information that you would need to pass this part of the job knowledge test. So take a quick look at them. In fact, I include Khan Academy throughout. There's also a dictionary of economics put out by the Oxford University Publishing Department. And there's a book out there called the Economics Book, which, again, all these will be in the show notes. Now, management. We're talking about the study of management, not the career track. And the career track used to be known as administrative, formerly known as administrative, but now known as management. We're talking about the different management styles. You need to know different management styles. Leader of servant, hierarchical, democratic, laissez-faire, and even chaotic. And I've been in plenty of places where it's been chaotic. They'll want to see that you understand. They want to prove that you understand, human psychology, as well as motivation and leadership, including Maslow's pyramid. Vocabulary, they'll want to talk about. They'll want to test you on Gantt charts and PERT diagrams. And finally, EEO practices. It's important for you to pull out. You can Google EEO, U.S. government, because EEO is straightforward across the line amongst U.S. government agencies. Now, again, I'd say that Khan Academy does a fair job on management, but I also give you other possibles. Dictionary of Business and Management. Emotional Intelligence is written by Daniel Goleman. It's actually, I want to say, is it 15 years old, 20 years old perhaps? Emotional intelligence is an important part of leadership training in the State Department. I know both the mid-level leadership course at the Foreign Service Institute as well as the senior level course, the Foreign Service Institute, tasks all the participants in reading emotional intelligence. And also there is a book out there called Dictionary of Management Terms, and that might be helpful to you. Let's go on. Mathematics and statistics. Yes, basically across the line, basic math and statistical analysis and techniques, including calculations. I say including calculations, and you see it in red down here. They want, for instance, they'll ask you the median of 5 numbers, and you have to come out and pick which one of the 4 multiple choice questions is in fact the median of those 5 numbers. They may look at regression and ask you questions about regression. It is not, you won't get any calculus questions, but you will get statistical questions where math is an important part of. I put down the concise Oxford Dictionary of Mathematics, again put out by the Oxford University reference, the Oxford University publications. Understanding basic statistics, which is a help for anyone who's not had any statistics whatsoever, as is the last one. Statistics for people who think they hate statistics. Well, I have to tell you, I still dislike statistics, even though I read statistics for people who think they hate statistics. I still hate statistics, frankly, but it's an important part of every FSO's knowledge, so they're going to test you on that. And then we come to the U.S. government, which is some of the toughest questions that you'll face on this test. In theory, we all know this, but a lot of people haven't taken U.S. government since high school, but basically we look at the comment. They want to know that you understand and answer questions on the composition, function of the U.S. government, key documents like the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. I strongly encourage you to get a pocketbook to carry around with you on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, because they're apt to ask you questions that deal with specific amendments, and if you don't know the amendments, it's going to be very tough to answer those questions. They may even delve into the Articles of Confederation. A good grounding, a basic grounding, and you'll see that I put the Advanced Placement U.S. History crash course. That would be an excellent thing to review before you take the test. But anyway, they're looking to understand that you understand the executive, the judiciary, Congress, and Congress's effect on foreign policy. They'll want to know that you understand the U.S. political system. Democrats, Republicans, Socialist Democrats, Libertarians, Communists, Green Party people. Yes, they all exist in the U.S. political system. And they want to know that you understand how government policies actually are created and implemented. U.S. diplomatic history is obviously key from the Barbary pirates to the Gulf of Tonkin to the UN Security Council resolution, which took us to the global war on terror, among other things. Major Supreme Court decisions, very important. You're going to have to go over key ones, including Marbury versus Madison, Dred Scott, Plessy versus Ferguson, Brown versus Board of Education, Roe v. Wade, equal rights, including marriage for LGBTQ folks, and Citizens United. I especially point out Citizens United, which the court ultimately decided was a violation of the First Amendment for corporations, that they could no longer that they couldn't give money to political action committees and whatnot. I have a feeling that may creep onto the test because it's a very important decision, a fairly recent decision too. And you'll want to look at the wars that the United States has been involved in. The Civil War obviously was a huge part of how we continued together and as a United States, as a single republic. World War I, World War II, and the genesis after World War II of the United Nations. Korea, which was a UN resolution that took us there, was never declared war in the United States. Vietnam, Desert Storm, invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan. Throw in a couple like the invasion of Panama, the invasion of Grenada, Central America, and you pretty much realize, I think you can see how important wars are. Online Academy does a decent job with the U.S. government. And again, I underline pocket copy of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. And I mentioned the AP course, crash course on U.S. history. All good sources. All will be included in the show notes, as well as on my website down the road. U.S. society and culture, what they're looking for here is not only pop culture, which comes up, but the major events, institutions, and movements in national history. From the labor union movement to the civil rights movement to the women's movement to the students' movement during the 60s. The 60s is a seminal point in American history, I think, for a variety of reasons, not least of which was the impact that it had on the United States prosecution and continued waging of the Vietnam War. Very important part of our history and our culture. Social issues and trends and the impact on foreign policy. I think Vietnam is really a textbook case on the impact on foreign policy. But also the recent, the LGBTQ movements, the labor movements. Pop culture, you're focusing on the arts, books, films, music, and television. Online, Khan Academy is on this, but I put them in because for those of you who like online stuff, it's there. Dictionary of U.S. History, the new Dictionary of Cultural Literacy. I know some of you may snicker at that, but I've seen it, I've looked at it, and it doesn't do a bad job in sort of bringing you up to speed on what is important and what are these movements we're talking about. And then finally, there's another book called The History Book. Has a little bit of a European focus, but, frankly, in the 20th century, which is what most of these questions will be focused on, remember, 60 questions in 40 minutes, will include, the history book has a lot on the United States. After all, the 20th century, I would argue, certainly the latter half, was the American century. And finally, world history and geography, world events, issues, and developments, their impact, these events on U.S. policy, global war on terror, which continues, although we don't call it that anymore. U.S. and world geography. Geography is important. They will ask you, for instance, one test question you may get or see something similar to is they want to know borders. So they'll ask you, which country does not have a contiguous border with Israel? And the choices are Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, or Saudi Arabia. I believe the correct answer is Saudi Arabia. But in any case, that's the sort of question they want. So you're going to have to focus on geography. And in fact, I give you some geography stuff at the bottom. World religions are very important, obviously. No need to go into that further. I think if you take a good look on, there are certainly world religion books. In fact, if you look at the political book or the history book, it will describe the ones I suggested in the previous slide as resources. I think that you will get enough information about world religions to be able to answer the questions that they seek. Resources I put down here, maps.com, an atlas, Google World, and in fact, there's the atlas I was talking about. Collins Atlas is cheap and will help you. If you like these videos, please subscribe. Please share them with any other folks you know who are students, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video where we will be discussing situational judgment, the situational judgment test. This is Bill Fitzgerald signing off from South Carolina. Have a good day, y'all.